So what we are going to be doing today is chapter 18, which is classification, biodiversity and conservation. This chapter has 3 parts, which is what makes it a little bit annoying. We are going to look at the first part, which is classification, and under classification we have to talk about something known as the definition of species. Now, in chapter 17, I did provide one definition of species, didn't I? If you remember, I said to you that in chapter 17, the definition of species is a group of organisms with similar morphological features, physiological features, and biochemical features. Morphological basically means the body shape and the appearance. Physiological is more towards their body function, and biochemical features was more towards similarities in their base sequences of DNA or amino acid sequences of proteins. And I also did mention that organisms of the same species are able to interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. Now, what you have to understand is that was only one of the 3 definitions when it comes to trying to define species. So you see, species has 3 definitions, and in fact, if you do a quick search on Google, I think there are 5 definitions of species. Now you might be thinking, why the hell does one term need to have 5 different definitions? I'm sorry, in this case, why does it need to have, in Cambridge A-levels at least, why does it need to have 3 different definitions? There is a reason for that. Now, the first definition of species is known as biological species, which is just this definition. Group of organisms with similar morphological features, physiological features, biochemical features, and they are able to interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. All this is good. I have explained this before. Just to do a quick overview of this, morphology just means their appearance. Look at this group of otters. They look like otters. All of them look similar to each other. One of them looks fat, but it doesn't matter. They all function the same way. Their body functions. The pancreas of one otter functions the same way as the pancreas of the other otter. Their lungs have similar tissues. Their heart has the same number of chambers. All the same body functions. And they also have similar biochemical features if you compare their DNA base sequence or their protein structures. All seems well. And also another very important thing, that's a sea otter right there, but it's able to interbreed with another sea otter to produce an otter cub, which is a fertile offspring, and it will continue to reproduce in the future. That's the first definition of species right there. The second definition of species. Now, before we see the second definition of species, we must give ourselves a situation. Now, imagine a situation where you are a person who studies animals and you accidentally discovered a new type of organism, and they are all within one population. You've never seen this organism before. Now, maybe this population was separated. They were on a deserted island, and due to speciation, you found this new group of organisms, so to speak. So now the question is, are all these organisms within the group the same species? That's what we want to know. So the problem here is, yes, they all have similar body shape, they all look fine, but you don't see them reproducing with each other. That means you don't see the organisms carrying out sexual reproduction. Why not? Maybe because it's not the mating season, and also because they are stressed due to human presence. Would humans reproduce if someone keeps watching us? Probably not. Okay, so same thing as well applies to them. They're like, what the hell are you doing here? Please don't disturb us. But that's what's happening. So you don't see them reproducing with each other. So can we use the definition of biological species? Because when you see the definition of biological species, they must be able to interbreed and they must be able to produce fertile offsprings. But that's not happening here, is it? So we have to remove that definition right there. So then we still have the other definition, which is a group of organisms with similar morphological features, physiological features, and biochemical features. But that's the thing, we have not cut them open. Maybe there are only 4 of these organisms, and killing them and cutting them open might risk extinction. So we don't want to do that. So we don't know how their body functions. So we cannot compare this little fella here and that little fella there to see how their body functions, if it functions in the same way. So we cannot use the physiological feature as a comparison as well. What about biochemical features? We have also not compared their DNA, so we don't know their biochemical features. Some students might say, oh, what's stopping us from analyzing their DNA? Well, maybe due to the fact that because it's a new species, or it's a discovery of a new type of organism, we want to be careful, because if we accidentally kill a few of them, they might all go extinct. So at the risk of that happening, we might just want to put them under observation first, so we can just look at them from the outside, and all we have from the outside is just their appearance or their shape, which is their morphological features. That is where the second definition of species comes in. The second definition of species is known as the morphological species, a group of organisms that have similar morphological features. We only use this definition when we discover a new type of organism, or when we are trying to compare organisms and we don't have enough information on their physiological and biochemical features, and we also have not seen them interbreed. That's when we use the morphological species definition. Is it the most perfect definition in the world? Obviously not. But let's look at this picture of like a dog. I don't like toy poodles, if I'm being honest with you, but whatever. Okay, are these dogs the same species? You might say yes, but then are you seeing them interbreeding? Are they reproducing with each other? No, you did not see the dogs reproduce with each other. Did you cut them open to see how their body functions? No. Did you see their DNA base sequence? Did you compare their amino acid sequence in the proteins? No. All you have for comparison is just their appearance or their morphology. Based on their morphology, they look quite similar, so we assume, keyword here is assume, that they are the same species. Let's make it a little bit more difficult. I have two different plants over here, one on the left and one on the right. Do you think they are the same species? We cannot use the biological species definition over here, obviously, but we can use the morphological species definition because they look quite similar to each other. Their flowers, based on the flowers, they don't really look similar, do they? The flowers look quite different. Even though they have those green stems and yellow petals, the one on the left have smaller petals and the one on the right might have larger petals. So in this kind of situation here, we might assume that they are different species, right? So that can be a little bit of a problem as well when we are using morphological definitions. So you see, the biological species definition is almost, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's almost perfect, but you will have limitations, especially when we discover new organisms. We have not seen organisms reproduce with each other, especially these new groups of organisms. We might not know how their body functions, or we have not analyzed their DNA. Now, there is another definition of species as well. Imagine two birds over here and they are in a particular habitat. The soil has worms and the pond has fish. Now, these two birds, the question is, are these two birds the same species? Now, you might say, oh, they look similar to each other. They almost have the same color. But I'm trying to trick you, especially for us colorblind, slightly, not colorblind, but color challenged folks like me. One is red on the left and the other one on the right is maroon. Yeah, let's go with maroon. So are they exactly the same species? And in fact, one of the birds is slightly larger and one is smaller, right? So what the scientists would do is they would see how the animals behave. Now, let's say, for example, even though there are worms in the environment and fish in the environment, both birds eat only the fish. And interestingly, a snake or a danger noodle in the area will also eat both these birds. The conclusion the scientists will make is these birds are, number one, in the same area, number two, they eat the same type of food, and number three, they have the same predators. Which means to say that we can assume, keyword here, assume the birds are the same species. And this is the third definition of species, which is known as ecological species. Ecological species just means a group of organisms living in the same area and have the same niche. You need to know the word niche, by the way. And niche basically means the function of the organisms in the environment. What's the function of the birds in the environment? The function of the birds is they eat fish. They control the fish population, and their function is also they are a source of food for the snake. That is their function basically, because they maintain the snake population and prevent the snake population from going extinct. And when they occupy the same niche and they live in the same area, by the ecological species definition, they are the same species. So we don't have to use the biological species definition. Did we see the birds reproduce with each other? No, we did not see the birds reproduce with each other. Do they look very similar to each other? Perhaps not, but they might still be the same species because of the third definition. So some students will ask me the question, which definition do I use in the exam? It really depends on the circumstances. What information do you have? For example, let's look at one question here. Now the question here is, I'm not going to give you the name of the organism, because if I give you the name of the organism, you might immediately be able to assume they are different species. Now, immediately when you compare these two organisms, are they the same species? Almost all my students will say, no, they are not the same species. Why? Because obviously they have different morphological features, because they look very different from each other. But let's also look at their function or their niche. The organism on the left eats small birds, but the organism on the right hunts down small mammals. So you can also use the ecological species definition. And also they are not living in the same area, by the way. Perhaps I didn't give you the clue, but let's just say one is living in India and the other one is living in North America. So we know that they are not living in the same area and they don't have the same niche or the same function. That's what we have to understand. Let's make it a little bit more difficult. Now you have two populations of butterflies. You have a population at the top and you have a population at the bottom. Now I'm going to ask you the question, are they the same species? This is where a lot of students of mine in class, about 50% will say, oh, they are different species because they look different from each other. But some of my students will say, no, they are the same species. They just look different due to genetic variation, because variation exists. So here we have a problem. So what we do is we need to have more information. Now, so the light gray butterfly loves to pollinate small plants, and they will lay their eggs on the small plants as well. And the caterpillar will eat the leaves of this particular plant. But for the dark gray butterfly, they will, in the same area, they might be in the same area, they might lay their eggs on tall trees, and the caterpillars will only eat the leaves of the trees. And also, what about the predator? The light gray butterflies are only eaten by small birds, but the dark gray butterflies, because they are usually found on the trees, they are eaten by monkeys. So, what's their function? Let's look at it. Let's list out their function again. For the light gray ones, their caterpillars eat a particular type of small plant. For the dark gray ones, the caterpillar eats leaves of the trees or the tree leaves. The light gray butterflies are food for small birds, but the dark gray butterflies are food for monkeys. Immediately, in this case, they have different functions in the environment, so they occupy or they have different niche. Because they have different niche, we will assume that they are considered different species. Okay, so that's what it means. So the three species definition that we have to understand are as follows: the biological species, morphological species, and ecological species. Okay, it won't be an otter biotutor video without, at least trying to insert as many otters into my videos as possible. Now, you have very many different types of otters, by the way. You have the sea otter, the Eurasian otter, the giant otter, the neotropical river otter. You have the spotted-necked otter. You have the hairy-nosed otter. And one of my favorites, the Asian small-clawed otter as well. But all otters are my favorites anyway. So, If I were to tell you, are all these otters different species, what would you say? Let's circle the North American river otter and the Asian small clawed otter. Are they the same species? It's in the name, isn't it? We can assume they are different species because they are located in different areas. One is in North America, one is in Asia. So based on ecological species definition, remember ecological species means they must be in the same area. So the condition here is they are not in the same area. We can assume they are different species. It's not the best conclusion to make, but it's an okay conclusion to start with. All right. There have been situations, by the way, that scientists thought that these organisms were different species, but in reality, they were the same species, even though they were in different geographical areas. So that does happen. What about the giant otter and the sea otter? The sea otter is fluffy, brown and gray, but the giant otter is less fluffy and it's brown. It's quite ferocious, by the way. Don't know whether you've seen the video of the a group of giant otters basically ambushing a caiman. Was it a caiman or was it a crocodile in the Amazon? And it killed it. I was like, damn, that's cool. That's really cool. All right, so we can also assume that the sea otters and the giant otters are different species based on different morphology. One beautiful way in which this question can be asked was based on the past paper from the May-June 2024 paper, variant 4.1. Now, they show you two types of bears, by the way. Grizzly bears, Ursus arctos horribilis, and polar bears, Ursus maritimus, are found in North America. Figure 8.1 shows a grizzly bear and a polar bear, right here. So, the grizzly bears have a varied diet that includes grasses, roots, berries, nuts, rodents, insects, and fish, a habitat of woodland or grassland, a maximum mass of 270 kilograms, and polar bears have a diet that consists of other animals such as seals, a habitat of land and sea ice, and a maximum mass of 450 kilograms. Climate change has caused populations of grizzly bears to spread further north and populations of polar bears to spread further south. And in some areas, there is a habitat overlap, and on rare occasions, grizzly bears and polar bears have interbred. Breeding has happened. The offsprings of grizzly bears... I'm sorry. The offsprings of grizzly bears and polar bears are known as... Be professional. I cannot do this. Pizzly bears. Pizzly bears can breed. I'm sorry. Pizzly bears can breed together in the wild. Figure 8.2 shows. I don't know why that's fucking funny, but it is. Figure 8.2 shows a pizzly bear. With reference to the three different species concepts, discuss whether grizzly bears and polar bears should be classified as separate species. When you look at the biological species definition, right? Biological species definition means that they have similar morphological, similar physiological and biochemical features, and they are able to interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. So based on the biological species concept, we can assume that yes, they are the same species because they can interbreed and produce fertile offsprings, which are the pizzly bears. Oh my god, I really cannot get over it. Okay. All right. Breathe. Okay. However, morphological species concept, based on just appearance, they are classified as different species because we can say that morphologically, yes, they are different species because they have different appearances, such as their color. The polar bear is white and the grizzly bear is brown. It has like a darker color as well, by the way. Or you can talk about the mass. The grizzly bear's maximum mass is 270 kilograms and the polar bear's maximum mass is 450 kilograms. So based on morphology, they look significantly different from each other. And what about the ecological species definition? We can assume, based on the ecological species definition, we will classify them as different species. Why? Because technically they live in different habitats. The grizzly bear, yes, I know there's overlap, but originally the grizzly bear was in woodlands or grassland, and polar bears are on land and sea ice. So it's different habitats, and they occupy different niche. What does it mean by occupy different niche? The grizzly bear's diet, they eat different types of food, and the polar bears eat different types of food as well. So based on biological species definition or concept, they are the same species in fact, but based on morphological species concept or definition, they are different species, and also based on ecological species concept or definition, they are different species. You can also add to your answer, we are still unsure because we have not compared their DNA base sequence and also their amino acid sequences of their proteins. So that is how the definition works. When we have more information, we will have a better idea whether they are the same or different species. But otherwise, if we don't have enough information, we can apply the best definition based on the circumstances. So I hope you understand that part.